On BBC Two now, considerably later than originally planned, we do still have a rare interview with the colourful and eccentric director behind Twin Peaks and The Elephant Man. Scene by Scene meets David Lynch, and as you might expect, the programme contains some strong language.
There's something magical when a film goes through a projector, the beam of light.
That's what Psycho was based on.
This is a shot from Hitchcock.
The camera always sees the truth. It's fantastic.
We're going to watch films from throughout your career. The American director David Lynch made the cult film of the 70s, Eraserhead, the nightmare of the 80s, Blue Velvet, and the surreal TV event of the 90s, Twin Peaks. His idyllic childhood in Eisenhower-era America has been the inspiration for most of his films, but his second feature, The Elephant Man, was a rare trip abroad to Victorian London. The film gained 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Director. Its producer, Mel Brooks, was one of the first to call Lynch Jimmy Stewart from Mars, and no phrase has better captured Lynch's otherworldly Boy Scoutedness. The director's sci-fi picture Dune was an expensive flop, but the film after that, Blue Velvet, gained another Best Director nomination and reviews to die for. Wild at Heart in 1990 won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but for some was a retread of old ground, brilliant but shallow. Then came Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, which was booed by some critics, but which now looks like classic Lynch.
Fire Walk With Me, I haven't seen that for a while.
Well, you're going to see some of it tonight.
Oh, beautiful.
And The Extraordinary Lost Highway, another commercial disappointment, which had the strangest story in modern American cinema. David Lynch's new film, The Street Story, about an old man who drives 300 miles on a lawnmower to meet his brother, is, like The Elephant Man, a work of the tenderest humanism. The director is known for monstrous darkness, roars on the soundtracks, the evil of Bob in Twin Peaks and Frank in Blue Velvet.
What are you looking at?
But there's always an angelic sweetness to the way he sees things. And it has to be said, a real eccentricity. The man I'm about to interview has collected mouldy sandwiches, likes building mounds of earth on the kitchen table, and planned a book about spark plugs. He says that interviews are like facing a firing squad, but you don't die. So that's what we're up against, a man dreamt up by the Surrealist Manifesto. His one-time girlfriend, Isabella Rossellini, says that Lynch getting ideas is like fishing. You never know what you'll catch. Here he is, surrounded by sharks, in his most detailed television interview ever. David Lynch, you don't like doing interviews, do you?
No, I don't.
Why are you sitting on this sofa then?
To do you a great favor.
That's maybe nice of you. But you're prepared to talk about your new film, Street Story?
You bet.
Have you been interviewed a lot about it?
I've done a few interviews concerning it, yes.
Yeah. Your mother was a linguist, is that right?
She has taught people English.
That's interesting that she's therefore a verbal person, but you are less verbal.
Right. You know, there's many different languages, and one of them is film or painting, and a lot of it is done without words.
What harm does it do to talk about a film?
A film is its own thing. And in an ideal world, I think film should be discovered knowing nothing. And nothing should be added to it, and nothing should be subtracted from it.
Okay, let's break that rule immediately. I've got here the opening of Blue Velvet.
She wore blue velvet.
Why is he waving so slowly? Is that shot in slow motion?
I believe it is, yes. Not that slow, but probably 48 frames or something. And that's a little slower too.
Why slow things?
It's a mood. You slow things down for a feeling, and those things are abstract reasons.
But it's not obviously a comic feeling you're after, is it? It's a dreamy feeling.
It's
or
more of a
mysterious...
dreamy feeling, and it could slide, either way. The next things that follow say more and more what it is.
Do you remember this book, Good Times on the
I
Street?
sure do. I haven't seen that for about, 100 years.
Well, you've said several times in an interview that some of the images in this book influenced that film, and sure enough, if you open this book, here you are, you've got picket fences.
There you go, man.
So I guess what that means is these kind of intense images in your films are things that were logged in your brain perhaps for a long time?
You don't know where things come from. They can come from memories, or they could be triggered. They just come to you from the ether. And if they are in the memory, if they're stored away, one day, for some reason, they're released. And it seems like a brand new idea. Or an idea comes in from the ether, and as it pops, it may be colored from something that you know. The picture that forms, sometimes reading a book, are pictures that you put together from the past, or your imagination kicks in. You can't really tell what forms those pictures. It's the words on the page and probably many internal things.
I've got here the opening of your new film, Straight Story. Similar opening in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this is based on a true story?
Yes, it is. Mary Sweeney first read about Alvin Straight in the New York Times and the trip he took. And she developed a fixation for 4 years till she got the rights to the story. And then she and her childhood friend, John Roach, wrote the script and handed it over to me.
Surely it's constricting to tell the story of a real person?
Not really. The words based on a true story give you, room to move. And when you make a film, you're making a different kind of reality anyway.
Why, for example, is the camera high here?
It feels correct.
In what way?
Well, you want to get the lay of the land, and you're observing, and now you're floating.
Why float? Why not move faster in?
You want to enter in, seeing things and float slowly into the story.
What sort of community is this?
It's a small neighborhood in the town of Lorenz, Iowa. It's a very small town. There's just one main street, and there's several smaller streets off of it, but it's very small.
Is this the sort of place you feel comfortable in?
I prefer a little bigger town, or no town.
What was that thump?
You'd have to wait and find out.
I can say.
Okay.
The main character of your film, Alvin Straight, has just collapsed.
Yeah, he's slipped and fallen.
What's going on? Oh my God!
Hey, Dorothy.
Oh my God! What's the number for 911?
Put the phone down, Dorothy.
And soon after this in the film, he gets a phone call to say that his brother is taken ill.
Yes.
What? Heimstra, are you crazy? We have a stricken man here.
Are you stricken, Alvin? Dorothy, put the phone down.
Dad? What's all the yelling? What have you done to my dad?
Oh, for cry-eye.
Dad? Are you okay, Dad?
I just need a little help getting up, honey.
Is your father like Alvin Straight?
There's only one Alvin Straight, but there's similar qualities to him, yeah.
I read in an interview you said your father was an innocent in some way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the thing that makes him similar to Alvin Straight.
And that's one of the things, yeah.
What else?
Well, it's a cowboy. The Old West, there's an inner strength coupled with an innocence and a tender side that Alvin has. Alvin is a lot like a cowboy.
Do you remember the way you portray the birth of the Elephant Man in The Elephant Man with a puff of
smoke?
Yeah. How did that seem right to you, to portray the birth of somebody with a puff of smoke?
Well, the smoke is not a solid thing. But on film, it almost appears to be solid. And I think the smoke ties in with, organic growth. And the Elephant Man, the neurofibromatosis growths always reminded me of Mount St. Helena, a smoke, frozen. The flesh became like a smoke, and it erupted, from inside the bones and protruded out and became, this smoke frozen.
And do you remember the births in Grandmother, where it's like little white things under the ground? They're like little shoots that grew up. It's a similar thing, it's sort of abstract way of portraying birth, isn't it? When you were, I think, about 17 or something, you took this trip to Europe that I've read about, and you planned to go for three years. And you stayed
15 days.
Now, that's a rather eccentric thing to do. Why?
It wasn't for me. I was going to go to school in Salzburg, Austria, and study with a painter called Kokoschka. And he wasn't there when I arrived, and I very quickly realized that Salzburg was too clean. And
look how clean Blue Velvet is there. It's incredibly clean.
Things are, but I was studying painting, and I felt it was too clean to paint. So I went searching, still in Europe, and each place didn't feel correct. Back I went.
Alvin Strait went to Europe. He fought in World War II, and he's quite a wise man. If he hadn't had that experience, if he had basically stayed in a little town like Lawrence, do you think he would have been a wise man also?
Oh, sure. Life is made up of many experiences, and if you allow them to, they'll teach you things.
But if he hadn't left this town, how would he learn about things like other cultures, for example?
Well, there's a unity among people, and there's something about It's a Wonderful Life. He stayed in town, and he wanted to go, but he stayed in town.
Please, God, something's the matter with Daddy.
He still had a full life. The human experience is true one place, is true another place. You don't have to travel around to get a lot of experience.
Yay! Hello, Bedford Falls! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, George! Merry Christmas, George!
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right. Attaboy, Clarence.
There's something about the way the world is. You can almost kind of tap into feelings outside your environment.
Here's a scene in the Strait story where Alvin Strait and his daughter Rose are sitting at night. It's almost like this thing we're talking about, about trying to discern the nature of the universe.
Rosie, I've got to go see Lyle. And I've got to make this trip on my own. I know you understand.
I guess so.
Look up at the sky, Rosie. The sky is sure full of stars tonight.
Without giving too much away, there's another part of this film that ends up with the camera going into the sky, and The Elephant Man ends up with the camera going into the sky. Why does that feel right to you? Is it just the pleasure of looking in the stars?
No, it's the small and the infinite, sort of hand in hand. And the stars are there, you know, for everybody. And they make you dream. And Alvin Strait shared the stars with someone. And it's a beautiful memory for him.
And it's a time not to talk again?
Yes.
Stand up.
Stand up!
Turn round.
Turn around! Turn around!
I'm going to tell you a story about that.
Go on.
It was just one of those, you know, beautiful things, after which Freddie started calling me Lucky Lynch.
Freddie Francis.
Freddie Francis, right. The camera, you know, is just drifting in very slowly on Tony Hopkins' face. And exactly as it stops, a tear comes out of Tony Hopkins' eye. And he told me later he'd been saying the Lord's Prayer, you know, during that scene, and it moved him, and out came the tear, and it was one take, and we were, you know, done.
Now, the street scenes in The Elephant Man were inspired by the fact that at the age of 19, you went and lived in Philadelphia, which is one of the most important influences on your life, and which you described as being an ocean of fear.
Well, Philadelphia was a city filled with fear, filled with twisted behavior. It's called the city of brotherly love. The absence of love was alive and well. There was sort of a sickness in the air, a twisted, infectious sickness and a decaying city. But it was very powerful, and a lot of Philadelphia seeped into me, and it's a time in life when the window is wide open and things hit you particularly hard. And it was a beautiful experience for me.
It seems paradoxical to say that, you know, this terrifying place was a beautiful experience.
Well, it fed many things that came along later.
There seems to be more fear in your films than many others in your generation. There are certainly more monsters.
Well, I think there's a mixture of things always in life. And in order to have one, you have to have the other. In order to appreciate ups, you have to have the downs. And so films are made up of contrasts that are felt more than seen. So there's feelings of things in the air, and sometimes those can take on a persona.
True that during the making of the Twin Peaks series, Bob wasn't in the original idea?
Right. I was on the set in Laura Palmer's house. We were going to shoot a panning shot in Laura's room to start with. And Frank Silva was a set decorator, and he was in arranging some furniture, and at a certain point he moved a chest of drawers in front of the door. And someone behind me, as I was pointing the other direction, said, "Don't block yourself in there, Frank." And my mind pictured Frank blocked in the room. And then I rushed into him and I said, "Frank, are you an actor?" And he said, "Why, I happen to be an actor." And so I said, "You're going to be in this." And so we did a couple of pans without Frank, And then I had him, kneel down behind the bed and freeze, and it panned around and lit, and there he was. Hard to kind of see right away, but if you held for a while, suddenly you sort of see him. And I didn't have a clue what I was going to do with that. And then later we were shooting the last setup in the house, and it was pretty late at night, and it was Mrs. Palmer at the end of the day where she lost her daughter, smoking a cigarette, distraught on the couch, and playing some scenes in her mind. And she sees something mentally and lurches up, and the operator has to crank, very fast to catch it. Nailed it, perfect. She screams at the top of this thing in a big close-up, and I said, beautiful, and I congratulated Grace on her job, and Sean, the operator, said, no, it's not good, not good, not good. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, someone was reflected in the mirror. And I said, who was reflected in the mirror? And he said, Frank was. And then I knew I was onto something.
That was a sign?
Very big sign. And it led to many things that those two events kept unraveling.
That's a lesson on a real reason for keeping your mind as open as possible, isn't it?
Absolutely. A lot of things that happen are maybe food for thought, but it ends up being useless. But some of those things are such great gifts you can't imagine.
When you turned 40, by this stage you had 2 children and you had 2 divorces. You made a film, Blue Velvet, and the lead character was very like you, Jeffrey Beaumont. Mm-hmm. He dressed like you as you're dressed now, with your shirt done up, and apparently wore the same wristwatch or something like that.
Well, I don't like wind on my collarbone, and that's how that all started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why you used to wear 3 ties?
And that's a sign of a person who's very insecure and needs protection. I would have worn several coats if it wasn't so warm where I was. I felt vulnerable.
Could I point out that ties aren't the best form of protection?
Well, they feel good.
And why were you vulnerable?
I was, I don't know why I was. I had things that I wanted to do, but I didn't like being in the world so much, out in the world. I liked being inside.
Is that agoraphobia?
I have a hair of that.
How does that come about?
It comes about, well, I'm not sure how it comes about, but there's many things to deal with outside the house. Bad things can happen, and why bother with that? Why not stay inside and do your work?
Yes, indeed. Jeffrey Beaumont, he was quite a naive man. He hadn't experienced very much. Is it odd that somebody who'd, by that stage, experienced quite a lot in his life would project so much of himself onto this almost a teenager? He behaves almost like a teenager.
I don't see him as me. I see him as Jeffrey Beaumont, and there's some similarities, but it's the idea of just a bit of innocence.
I've heard that you, as a young guy, had this fantasy of hiding in a girl's room and watching her.
Yeah, that's a fantasy. That goes together with many other things, and a story comes out. And it's the opening of another world for Jeffrey.
Get out of there! Get out! Put your hands up! On your head! Do it! Get on your knees! Do it! What are you doing? Who are you? What's your name? What's your name?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey what?
Jeffrey nothing.
Give me your wallet. Give me your wallet! Jeffrey Beaumont? What are you doing in my apartment, Jeffrey Beaumont?
I wanted to see you.
Shut up. Don't say anything. Go into the closet. Don't say anything, or we'll kill you. I mean it.
Is it true you used a new type of lens that would show as much of the apartment as possible?
No.
Your cinematographer said you did.
No, there might have been.
You must have been telling lies.
There might have been that didn't even look too wide a lens, really.
Hello, baby.
Shut up! It's Daddy, you shithead. Where's my bourbon?
How at the end of Blue Velvet is Jeffrey different? He's shot Frank. And he'll go back to college.
Well, we don't know. That's the thing about the film. It starts and then it ends. And nothing should be added and nothing should be taken away. And so it's wrong for me to say, but it's beautiful for, anyone has the right to, go where they want to go.
See, in private, when you're not talking to an interviewer like me or when you're not on TV, do you talk more about your films?
No.
To your family here?
No, they'll back me up.
Is that true? Yes, nods. Yeah. And do you find it frustrating that he doesn't, or are you happy with that situation? Yeah, as long as he keeps making movies. What's the best scene in the Straight Story?
There is no best scene.
There must be.
No, it's like music. Every note is important, and to the whole. Every element that you do is important, and so then the thing can hang together. If you take anything out and just look at it without the rest, it's not the same. The film is a sequence of events, and the way they're ordered is critical.
I understand that point about structure, but there's such a thing as a bum note, isn't there? A scene where surely if we sat and watched the film now, you would have times when you think, if I had to do that again, I would do it slightly differently.
No. While you're working, you don't leave until it feels correct to you, because you're the spectator and the one that's trying to stay true to the story. So if it feels correct, then you move on.
Okay, well, I'll say what I think is the best scene. It's near the end of the film, and Alvin goes to a bar, and he has a beer for the first time, and he's very, very near his brother's house. He's gone on a long journey. And it was something to do with the pace of that scene.
Well, that scene seems a little irrelevant. And yet, I don't know why, but always I felt that scene was critical. It has its own pace, and it has a lot to do with the idea of drinking and why we drink, and it has to do with being near an end and wanting to prolong something.
I haven't had a drink in a lot of years, but now I'm going to have me a cold beer.
What flavor?
What does a Miller's Light taste like?
This guy is great. This bartender.
Why is he great?
Just his face and the way he moves.
It's really calm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Zen or something, this scene, isn't it?
A Zen bartender.
Yeah.
It's good. Keep the change.
Thank you. There's an interesting rig you got out there. Make it up the hill okay?
That hill and 200 more just like it.
How far'd you come?
From Iowa. I'm headed for Lyle Straight's place.
Iowa? My God, you must be thirsty.
It's from here that this scene becomes extraordinary, I think.
Another beer?
This will do me fine. I wonder, could you point me to Lyle's place? I haven't seen him in an awful long time.
I don't know if you know the films of Ozu, the Japanese, but this is this is the Ozu scene in this film. I'm going to show you. In some interviews I've read, you've used this phrase, the eye of the duck scene. What does that mean?
Well, you know, nature can teach us a lot of things. And there's something about, in painting, you're working within a certain shape canvas. And there's many things that one does intuitively to move the eye. There's repetition of shape, repetition of color. But when you start looking at a duck, you see your eye is moving in a certain way. And you see textures and colors and shapes, and you start wondering about a duck. What it can teach us about, any kind of abstract, painting or proportions or even sequences, scenes. And it always is interesting that the eye is in the perfect place. If you move it to the body, it would get lost. If you move it to the leg or the beak, it's two kind of fast areas competing. Even though the eye is the fastest, it's the little jewel.
Fast meaning what?
Well, there's slow and fast. An empty room is a certain speed, and a person standing there is another speed. And that proportion is can be beautiful. If the room is a 2 and the person is a 7. I think a person is around a 7. Fire and electricity can go up to a 9, for instance, or a really intricately designed, decorative room is pretty disturbing. Sometimes it's too fast, but then if you put something slow in it, it could work beautifully. In a busy room and a person, they fight each other. So,
is this to do with how fast our eye moves to scan it, to see what's happening?
It's a relationship thing, I think. Fast and slow areas.
Okay. What is the eye of the duck scene in the Straight Story?
I haven't thought about it. I have to think about it. I can't just jump in and think, but I believe every film has the eye of the duck scene, but it can fool you, which one it is. It could be the scene we were talking about. I don't know.
What's the eye of the duck scene in Blue Velvet?
I used to know.
Is it the In Dreams song?
It's the eye of the duck. That's the eye of the duck. Yes, yes.
I close my eyes, then I drift away into the magic night. I softly say a silent prayer, like dreamers do. Then I fall asleep to dream my dreams of you. In dreams I walk with you. In dreams I talk to you. In dreams you're mine all the time we're together.
All right, let's hit the fucking road. We're giving our neighbor a joyride. Let's get on.
And what's the eye of the duck scene in Elephant Man?
I used to know.
Is it the scene when he goes to the theater near the end?
No. I think, strangely, the eye of the duck scene is the ending.
Okay. Today, lots and lots of filmmakers are using computer-generated imagery and everything like that, and you haven't used that so much. There's still a kind of magic lantern quality about your films, even in Lost Highway, and that transformation from one guy to the other guy, you didn't use computers to do that. It was all in-camera stuff. And it reminds you of like the sort of things that Jean Cocteau was doing, you know, the reverse motion and all that kind of thing. Why does that appeal to you?
It's organic. And I'm not against computer, you know, the computer or digital, and I love manipulating images. But film still has the beautiful organic quality. And a lot of times with light and the emulsion and the way it's developed and some happy accidents, you get something that's thrilling to the soul. I think right now digital's you know, coming up every year, but it hasn't matched you know, the beauty of film.
Even when you're making a much more complex story, for example, in the end of Fire Walk With Me, after Laura is killed and we go into the Red Room, there's a lot of sort of complicated things going on, and still you're using very simple techniques like the surrealists would use, the reverse.
It's the same thing. Plus, there might have been some way to, you know, work by pouring over to digital and then coming back to film, but it would have been way too expensive for us.
I want all my garmentos here.
Except for the screen ratio, that kind of filmmaking could have been done in the 1920s. And why do you smile when I say that? Is that?
Well, because, you know, it's so beautiful to discover, you know, ways of doing things, and it's a beautiful medium because it allows so many things to happen.
I remember when I first saw Fire Walk With Me at the Cannes Film Festival, there were loud boos. How does the apparent failure of a film like this affect you?
Dune was a failure to me because I didn't feel I did, you know, the Dune I should have done. And this was not a failure to me because I felt it was a film, you know, that I did the way I should have done it. And so we learn that we can't control anything that happens after a film is finished. And sometimes things go well in the world and sometimes they don't. But if you believe in the film and you've done your best, they can't take that away from you. There's this thing, there's the donut and there's the hole. And we should keep our eye on the donut and not on the hole. Everything that happens after a film is finished is maybe interesting, and it can be, you know, very hurtful or exhilarating in certain ways, but it has not much to do with the work. And so I would like to go back to work as quickly as I can, or do, you know, painting or work on music, and be separate from those things which, you know, I can't control.
What about criticism about some of the themes of your films? Like, I read a piece recently that Angela Carter wrote about the way you portray women in your films. She said, you know, that your films have got a sort of misogynistic view of women, that the characters are not understood, they have no inner life. How do you react to that? Does that just bounce off you also?
Well, the problem is that somebody sees a woman in a film and then mistakenly assumes that that's the way the person sees all women. And when in actuality it's just that particular woman within this particular story. It means nothing more than that. Although it could have, you know, repercussions. A small story can open up, you know, a bigger feeling, but it doesn't mean that Alvin Straight represents all 73-year-olds. Any more than Dorothy Valance represents all women, or whatever she was talking about.
Do you think that if you were falling in space, that you would slow down after a while or go faster and faster? faster and faster. And for a long time, you wouldn't feel anything. And then you'd burst into fire. Forever. And the angels wouldn't help you. Because they've all gone away.
She's very anguished there because she's saying that the angels have all gone away, and yet at the end of this film, the angel comes. So is she wrong?
No, things can go away and then they can come back again too.
And there are angels in lots of your films.
There are? I don't remember them all.
In The Elephant Man, there's in several more there are angels, and you don't literally believe in angels.
Oh yeah.
No, you don't. Do you?
Yeah.
Is that because that you were taught to believe in angels as a kid?
Have I seen seen them? No.
You don't literally mean top of the Christmas tree type thing. I really don't believe that you do.
There are many things I think that are out there that we don't know about, but sometimes you get certain feelings.
Do you feel much in common with other American filmmakers roughly your same age or anything like that? Do you feel part of a generation of painters or artists who come from an art school background like you?
No. I feel strangely, and I think probably other directors feel somewhat alone. And you make friends, but so much of the thing is internal.
When you look at a lot of American actors and directors today, they're quite involved with politics. And in the past, of course, famous Hollywood supported Adlai Stevenson and supported JFK and things like this. Do you feel, well, you're smiling, why are you smiling at that?
Well, I'm not a political person.
Oh yeah?
No.
So when you look at the way that Hollywood and of course it's not all types of politics, it's mostly the Democrat side, not always. When you look at those relationships, are you cynical about that, or you just
No, I'm not cynical at all. I'm just saying that I don't understand politics. I don't understand the concept of two sides. And I think that probably there's good on both sides, bad on both sides, and there's a middle ground, but it never seems to come to the middle ground. And it's very frustrating watching it, and seemingly we're not going forward. Some change of simple, really, relatively speaking, and we're going forward somewhere. It could be a beautiful place. There's many little obstacles, and there's many people that are just opposed, and we're not moving forward.
When you were talking before there about straight story and about the possibility of understanding the whole world from your own small place, it was almost the sort of thing that Ronald Reagan would say. Is that true, do you think?
I have no idea what Ronald Reagan would say.
Well, I know you had dinner at Reagan's White House, but what I had in mind was that provincial idea where you root your whole view of life just in the small everyday understanding you have of
I think there's time to go out and gather things together. And they say when you're little, the window is open. And then the window closes, not all the way, but closes for safety reasons. So stuff stops coming in, and you can work with things that are there, and new things can pop in and join with them. But now it's a time to start doing some things with those things you've gathered.
You're, I think, around 53 now. What age do you feel?
Inside, we're ageless. And when we talk to ourselves, it's the same person we were talking to the same age when we were little. And it's the body that is changing around that ageless center.
See, surely that's not true. I used to be scared of things as a kid, and I'm not scared of them now.
That's not the self that you're talking to. That's the amount of information that you have. And information and experience, knowledge and experience is part of is the process. And so the more knowledge you have coupled with experience, you know, the more you go. But the self you talk to, I was talking about, that's the one that's sort of ageless. Doesn't mean ignorant, it just means it just doesn't have an age.
Okay, the ending of The Elephant Man, he decides to sleep like a normal person, and in doing so he kills himself. And then your camera goes up into the stars again, as we've seen it doing here in the straight story. Now, what is that saying? Does that mean that even though someone dies, something remains afterwards?
Yes.
What remains?
Well, they say many things remain. It's just the body that's dropped.
Never, oh never, nothing will die. The stream flows, the wind blows, the cloud fades, the heart beats. Nothing will die.
Good place to end.
I think so. A critic once said of your work, David Lynch is very interested in getting inside our heads, but he has nothing to do once he gets in there. Do you understand that?
Not one bit.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Great, everybody.
What critic said that?
I think it might have been Serge Denis. Do you know that guy?
No.
I think he meant that your films make people dream, but there's no surface message there.
Well, that's okay then.
Yeah.
I want to see this book. This book even smells. Yeah, it's a beautiful smell.